So Bernie Sanders recently made a speech on the Senate floor where he discussed the new budget proposed by Republicans, and that budget includes a repeal of the Affordable Care Act. Now, he also talked about their plan to basically gut Medicare, gut Medicaid, and privatize Social Security, and he was not having any of it. And he ended up going off on what I think is one of his best rants ever. And he was just on fire. He threw the Republican Party under the bus, he called them out, and he even called out Democrats. So let's go ahead and watch this, and then there's a lot I want to talk about afterwards.
The Republican plan, their budget plan, lays the groundwork for ending the Affordable Care Act, which will remove tens of millions of Americans from the health insurance they get. Now, there is nothing wrong with change. We can always improve. I would hope that during the course of this debate, my Republican friends who want to repeal the Affordable Care Act will come down and tell us what their plan is, how, in fact, they are going to provide quality, cost-effective health care to all Americans. Well, you know what? They all voted against the Affordable Care Act. Senator Enzi is right. We did not get one Republican to vote for it. They have had 8 years to be thinking about how they're going to come up with a new plan. And I would hope, but I do not expect, one Republican to come to the floor and say, oh yeah, we're going to throw 20, 30 million people out of their health insurance. This is our new plan. This is how we're going to provide health care to those people. They have no ideas. Their theme is to repeal and then delay, or someday they're going to come up with a new plan. You don't destroy a house without having another house in which people to live. You don't throw 30 million people off of health care without having a plan to provide health care to those people. Many Republicans have been talking about for years. They want to end Medicare as it presently exists, a program which is life and death for millions of seniors. And they want to voucherize Medicare, give people a check, and then let them go out to the private insurance market and get the best deal they can. Imagine that you are an 85-year-old senior citizen who has been diagnosed with cancer, and you get your check for whatever it may be. We don't know what it will be, $7,000, $8,000, $9,000. And you go to the insurance company, you say, I've got $9,000, I'm 85, I've been diagnosed with cancer. Give me an insurance program which will take care of my medical needs, my hospital needs, and the insurance agent will laugh in your face because $9,000 or $8,000 will last you at most for a 1 week. That is their plan. The American people are outraged at the high cost of prescription drugs in this country. Let us be clear, because of the power of the pharmaceutical industry and their lobbying and their campaign contributions. A power that exists, by the way, not only influencing Republicans, but too many Democrats as well. We pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. In fact, 1 out of 6 Americans who go to a doctor to get a prescription for an illness can't even afford to fill the prescription. And yet, under the Republican proposal, if you eliminate the Affordable Care Act, the donut hole, which now helps seniors pay for their prescription drugs, will be eliminated, and prescription drugs for seniors could rise by as much as 50%. Oh, and by the way, at a time when we have more income and wealth inequality than any other major country on earth, when the very, very rich are getting richer while the middle class shrinks, the Republican proposal not only throws 20 to 30 million people off of health insurance, not only raises the price of prescription drugs for seniors, not only moves forward to privatize Medicare, but shock of all shocks, our Republican colleagues want to give massive tax breaks to the top 2%.
I thought that was absolutely epic, and I got chills listening to him there because everything he said was correct. Now, there were so many good points that he made, I thought that I wanted to re-emphasize them. So for example, he discusses how the Republicans are planning to repeal the Affordable Care Act, which would throw 30 million people immediately off of their current health insurance plan. Now he states, you don't destroy a house before you give people another place to live. This is just common sense. I have no problem reforming the Affordable Care Act. In fact, I think it needs to be reformed quite urgently. But you don't just repeal it without proposing a different solution. If you do that, it will be a catastrophe. And Republicans are doing this specifically for political reasons, and they're not thinking about the real-world consequences that it would have. If 30 million people are thrown off of their health insurance plan, people would die. But they're doing this because they want to win political points. It's really just grotesque, and his point about them not coming up with a plan, I thought that that was a brilliant analogy. Yeah, you don't destroy a house before you give someone a new place to live. Now, another point he makes that I don't think people talk about enough is that he discusses how a repeal of the Affordable Care Act would force rural hospitals to shut down because they would lose their funding. And if you live in a rural area, then the distance between you and a hospital would increase, and then that would lead to people dying when there's medical emergencies. So a repeal of the Affordable Care Act, it shouldn't even be on the table. We absolutely need to reform it, and I think that the Affordable Care Act was the wrong solution to our broken healthcare system to begin with. I've always maintained that we need a single-payer system. But if you're not going to have a single-payer system, at a minimum, you need a public option. And when Democrats had a supermajority, they didn't even do that. So now it's coming back to bite them in the ass because they have this Affordable Care Act, which is basically broken and needs to be reformed, and that job is now in the hands of Republicans, and they want to just complete and utterly destroy it. Well, what's going to happen is it will lead to more people being uninsured than before the Affordable Care Act was passed. So it's going to be a disaster. Now, he also talked about the pitfalls that would inevitably come to fruition if you turn Medicare into a voucher program. He said if you're 85 years old and you try to find insurance with the check that they send you, whether it's $7,000, $8,000, or $9,000, well, you might be excited to get that check and think, oh, I might actually be able to find a cheaper insurance plan and have some more money, and that might actually seem like something that is appetizing. It's not, because when you take that money into insurance offices, you're going to get laughed out of there because that's not going to be enough to cover your insurance. So you're going to be lucky to find even the most basic insurance plan with that. So it's not the option. The only solution is to completely get off of our current system of healthcare where all of our healthcare and insurance is in the hands of private companies because then they rip people off. Now, he also discussed prescription drugs and described how the health insurance industry is able to rip off Americans by bribing politicians. And my favorite part was that he even called out Democrats too. I mean, when I was watching this, I literally shouted, damn, because he was on fire. I think that he went in to this rant with a specific speech and what he wanted to say, but I think he just kind of went off the cuff there because that was brilliant. It was a reality check that every single idiot in Congress needed to hear. And there were also things not in the video that he talked about. So he explained how the Affordable Care Act is not perfect, but it's just a matter of fixing it and building upon it, not destroying what little progress we've made with it. And he also talked about how polling indicates that Americans actually want to spend more money on Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security, not less. So these are the things that will resonate with the American people. And I wish that all of the Democrats would take note as to what he's doing here, because he is being a populist. He's speaking about things that are common sense that the American people, by and large, agrees with. He's looking specifically at polling, and he's saying, if you cut Medicare, you are going against the American people. You are going against democracy. So everything about this speech is just amazing. And I initially was interested in watching the speech because of the viral portion where he pulls up a Trump tweet, and I'll talk about that in a different segment. But I mean, everything else about it was just golden. I would highly encourage you to watch the entire speech because it was great. Bernie Sanders was on fire. Bernie Sanders has been on fire, but you can tell that Bernie Sanders that we're seeing in this video is a lot different than the Bernie Sanders that we saw during the election, who had to swallow his pride and campaign for Hillary Clinton, someone who he clearly did not believe in. So this is the Bernie Sanders that we're going to continue to see, and I absolutely love it and adore Bernie Sanders and wish that more politicians in Congress would emulate this strategy, which is just appealing to the American people and calling out people who are wrong.
Support this podcast by joining the independent progressive media revolution today at humanistreport.com.